Hello and welcome to the Productive Wellbeing Show with me, your host for today, Abigail Barnes, and it is episode 18 today. And today I am joined by the amazing Marilyn Devonish. And Marilyn, amongst other things, is a remote working expert, and she is here today in the capacity of a remote working expert. She's been doing it for over 17 years. So this woman knows her stuff. So we are going to have a conversation about how to ace remote working. So as you're joining today, let us know in the comments if you're live, if you're joining on the replay. Also, let us know where you're joining from, because we'd love to know. As we go along, if you've got any questions, put the questions in, and if we get time, we'll answer those questions. Otherwise, Marilyn and I are going to hop onto LinkedIn and Facebook after this to reply to your comments and questions. But I'm so excited to be having this conversation. Welcome to the show, Marilyn.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for the invite.
It is so awesome. And so, guys, I cannot wait to share what Marilyn has got to offer in this sort of experience from the remote working point of view. So, Marilyn, let's just sort of set this up before we dive into the three amazing tips that you're going to talk to us about today. So, ordinarily, remote working and flexible working and working from home would have been something that an organization thought about, had a lot of meetings about, wrote processes and procedures around, tested, trialed, kicked to the curb, and stress tested, etc., etc. In this situation, we've all been thrown in the deep end and told to swim. So guys, if you feel like you're kind of just about keeping your head above water, then give us a thumbs up, because this is how a lot of people who are speaking to both myself and Marilyn are sort of saying that they're feeling thrown in. On top of that, they've got their children to look after who normally wouldn't be there. Plus, they might be sharing their remote working space, their office, their whatever, with friends, family, animals, and then their children. So Marilyn, what's going on? What are you finding? What are people saying to you?
And you're absolutely right. For me, starting in 2003, working as a flexible working implementation consultant, it was going into organizations. We're often working with builders and architects and ergonomic designers if we're actually redesigning the whole space to improve the workflow. And yes, you're doing the briefing sessions with the chief execs, senior leaders and managers, and the frontline staff, designing all the policies and procedures. Back in those days, we didn't have the technology you have now. So there's all the procurement to be done. What do people need to support them? And then all the briefings about health and safety, and all of that would have been into the mix. And that could take several months to get to the point where we now go, okay, off you go. And normally it's just working like 1 or 2 days a week. And our biggest job was almost having to sell the idea to organizations. And I was mainly then working in central and local government as a management consultant. So it was selling the idea, but you're right, now everybody's thrown into it. And I think, first of all, one of the first things I noticed was what I call the woohoo, where people are like, oh my God, I'm at home. I don't have to commute. And they were just really excited. And I was like, okay, that's probably a bit like the honeymoon period in a relationship. And then you got to the point of people going, oh, the days are starting to blur into one. You're sort of like, and you're actually seeing those memes online. Today is the 37th of April, May, because it's just like, oh my God, it's a bit of a blur. And I think now what we're hitting into is the bit where people are almost climbing the walls. And I've seen it's been affecting people's sleep. Some people are having really vivid dreams. And I think that's because they're able to get more into a sleep cycle, because you don't have the busyness of all the commuting and the running around and the kind of social aspect of life. And so, yeah, it's kind of now starting, I think, to take on a different dimension. And it's maybe also not as fun as some people thought, because if people are furloughed and you're not allowed to work, then okay, what are you going to do with your time? How are you going to fill and structure your day? And if you are working, there's one of the issues, which is the kind of pressure of people often do too much. So yeah, there's a lot happening in the mix at the moment, for sure.
Yeah. And I think the big thing two big things that I want to kind of get across in this conversation is, the first one, it's okay not to be okay. And then the second one is, it doesn't have to be perfect. There is no perfect. Everybody is making this up. Nobody has got like an upper hand on anybody, and everybody's in this together. And I think that's an important thing to sort of understand, is you may feel like your office setup is a hot mess, like you are just an absolute disaster, you're seriously unprofessional, the top half looks great, the bottom half you might be wearing your pajama bottoms still. Incidentally, I'm wearing leggings and a dress. I don't know about you, Marilyn, but
it's just a complete dress today.
A complete dress, fantastic. Yeah, well, I find I get cold because I'm used to the air conditioning from the office. So rather than sort of put tights on, which kind of seems a little bit more formal, I've just put leggings on. So if anyone were to see me, they'd be like, what the heck is that girl wearing? But for me, as long as sort of the top half is looking presentable, that's how I feel professional. So I think the important thing for people to really take away is there is no rule book. Everybody's making it up. It would, in an ideal situation, have been done so much more professionally, but it's not. So please start sharing your 3 strategies that we can apply to ace this remote working shenanigans that we find ourselves in right now. And guys, as you're joining us, let us know where you're from. And if you're joining on the replay, please just join in. Like we are, if you're joining live and you're sort of watching this week, we're a couple of days away from the Easter weekend as well. So Marilyn, in her strategies, is kind of going to give us permission to maybe take a little bit of time off to rest and reset. So Marilyn, what is your first strategy that we can do?
And before we get into how to get your mind and your brain kind of on side and working with you and for you rather than against you, just one thing I've been sharing with many of my clients is to recognize what's going on here as well. We are, I'd say one of the things that's happening globally is we're hitting into the grief cycle. So if any, for those who are familiar with the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that's the baseline version. Of course, there are the variations on that. But if you look at the grief cycle, I think that's what many people are going through. And when you see the cycle, you go, oh, okay. And it gives you a bit more kind of reassurance in terms of where you're at and why you might be feeling the way you're feeling. So in terms of the mind and the brain, one of the things that I've kind of noticed when people are sharing, when people are talking online about the climbing the walls, going stir crazy, feeling like a caged animal and all of that sort of thing, I understand totally what they mean. And one of the things I would say from a kind of coaching perspective is, okay, I hear you. And is that what you want? Now, of course, the answer for that is no. Now, let me give you an example. I do a lot of work around coaching people with public speaking and presentation skills and how to be confident online and in front of the camera. And one of the things I'll say to people at the start is, what do you want? And they'll say, well, I don't want to be nervous and I don't want to be anxious. Great. What do you want? Oh, well, I don't want palpitations and I don't want sweaty palms. Okay, what do you want? Well, I don't want to be like a rabbit in the headlights. And this will go on for a while and they'll get to the point of going, what's the right answer? And I say, so let me just get this straight. What you want is, you want palpitations, you want sweaty palms, you want to be like a rabbit in the headlights, you want to forget what you're going to say, you want to freeze up. They'll laugh and go, no, of course not. I'll say, well, I asked you, what do you want? And I know their intention is to try and explain what they don't want. But actually, in that moment where you go, I don't want palpitations, I don't want sweaty palms, I don't want to be like a rabbit in the headlights, I don't want to be climbing the walls, I don't want to feel like a caged animal. What that does is neurologically, it kind of sends a message to the brain and the body. And as soon as you think about, I don't want, and then you say the thing, your brain, I say it's a bit like a genie, like your wish is my command, and it will just run the program that you've given it. So it will start thinking about the very thing you're thinking about. So I say to my clients, okay, if you don't want to feel like a caged animal, if you don't want to be climbing the walls, if you don't want to be going stir crazy, what do you actually want instead? And they'll say, well, of course, I want to be calm. I want to be relaxed. I'll say, great, okay. So in your daily life, what are the things that bring you a sense of calm? Or what are the things that bring you a sense of peace? Or if people are saying, oh my God, I'm so lonely. Okay, so what's the opposite of loneliness for you? Because sometimes people go, oh, Marilyn, it's semantics. I'm like, actually, it's not, because I could give you one word and we could say to everyone watching this video, what does that word mean to you? And we'll get 29,000 different answers and it's the same word. So I'm not going to make assumptions about what is the opposite of that for them. I say, okay, what's the opposite of that for you? How would you actually like to feel instead? And then we want to start putting our focus there. And it's not about going from hot to cold in terms of, okay, I'm lonely and climbing the walls and I'm now, it's like, no, it's not that. But I would be saying, what could you do to bring you more peace? What could you do to bring you more calm? What could you do to bring you more clarity? What could you do? And so we're not having to just whoosh, go there from here to here, but it's stepping stones. And if people wanted to make a game of it, particularly with the kids, if they've got the kids running around as well, I say start, depending on what people say to me, they might say, oh my God, I just feel so unhappy at the moment. I just feel so stressed. And I say, okay, start a happiness compendium or start a joy compendium and cut up some bits of paper so the kids can get involved in that if they've got safe scissors, and you write down all of the things that bring you happiness, or you write down all the things that bring you joy, or you write down all the things that bring you peace, and you fold them up in little bits of paper. Get a nice jar or a nice box. Now, for normally I'd say put everything into the box. For now, we're probably going to put in the things that you can do in self-isolation, because if going to Bali is one of the things that brings you peace, clearly you're not doing that at the moment while we're in isolation. So it can either be, oh, that's on the list for when this is over. But I say write down the things that you know you could do. And it could be things, simple things like taking time just to do a little breathing exercise. Or if you go, oh, actually, I really used to enjoy my morning, 10 minutes of yoga. Great. All of those go in. And then on the days where you're feeling less than, and you don't want to just sit on the sofa and you want to do something, that's where you go to the jar or the box, you pull one out, and your job for today is to work that into your system. But focusing your brain and your mind on what you want it to do rather than what you don't want it to do. And if anyone's ever done a defensive driving course, the principle is exactly the same. Because I remember when I did one, I was in my 20s. And the guy said, okay, you're spinning into a wall. Where are you going to look? And he's asking the whole class. Now we're all like, well, dude, you look at the wall, because and he let us all answer. And then he said, actually, no, you're going to look at where you want to go. We're like, oh. And it took a moment for that to sink in. And he said, because if you look, and he was an ex-police driver, he said, if you look at the wall or whatever you're hurtling towards, you're going to go towards that. So if the wall is there and that's where you're heading, you look over there and it seems so counterintuitive. And this was years before I became, 12 years before I became a trainer of NLP and all of that stuff. But I remembered what he said when I got into NLP and all the rest of it. I was like, oh my God, it's exactly the same principle. And it really does work. It sounds very simple, but it is super powerful. So, and that's what and also you want to get the mind focused. There's actually, maybe if we've got time at the end, maybe I'll do one of the little exercises from the photo reading course, which is about how to get focused, how to get into a sense of concentration, and how to get yourself into a state of relaxed alertness. And it takes about 20 seconds to do. So we may do that one at the end.
This is so amazing. I am absolutely loving it. How are you finding it? Because for me, what I just took away from that point is the mind is like your loyal dog. It doesn't know the difference between I don't want and I want. So your whole job is to talk about what you do want and to focus on it like it's already a part of your life. And rather than talking about climbing the walls, talking about the future that you want and how you see life after this and what's going to happen, etc., etc. So I love that. So basically tip number 1 is get your brain on side
and tell it what, and speak to it and focus on what you would like it to do. It's not about being in denial either. This isn't about the Pollyanna syndrome, but it's saying, okay, I say it like it's like flipping a coin, not this, not this, and part of it, what it will really help, and that's the way you create new habits and new strategies and new behaviors as well. So absolutely get it to work with you as a friend and as an ally. And I often do say training the brain is like training a pet, where it takes a bit of repetition, and sometimes.
And this is such an amazing conversation, and I'm sure if we had more time, Marilyn would be able to tell us a ton of books and where to go. But if you're loving this, if you're interested in this, leave a comment, and Marilyn's also going to tell us where we can find her at the end. So Marilyn, then what is your second tip for us?
So the second thing is about, now we're going to get into the workplace. And for those who are still working and those who are perhaps self-employed and maybe having to work in a different way for the first time ever, one of the big things that we're doing when we're going into organizations is about scoping the work. Now, this is going to help from the employee point of view and also the management point of view, because the scenario you're describing when we first started, you're going into the organization. One of the big things we're looking at is, okay, what is the work that needs to be done? Which of this work can actually be done off-site, from a remote location or from home? And what is the work? What exactly does this entail? And with one of the big installations we did for, God, I think I had like 6,000 staff, we actually went in and broke every single piece of work down into what we call work packages. So I could tell you exactly how long that job takes to do within 2 or 3 minutes. So we knew that if somebody was working at home, they could complete X number of those work packages. One of the things that happens when people are working at home, they will often find that they finish earlier, and they then think, oh my God, I better do more. Or they've got to fill every single minute of the day because they feel guilty otherwise. And I say, look, if you know that you can produce 5 reports in a typical working day, and you've done your 5 reports and it happens to be 3:45, you probably finished earlier because you didn't have all of those little distractions, having a conversation here, having a conversation there, being called into a meeting over there, chatting to someone at the water cooler, getting up, walking all the way to, if you're lucky enough to have a staff kitchen, to go and get a drink, la, 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 la. All of those things actually take a lot of time. And also even going to lunch, there are times we'd have to get up, go out of the building, probably maybe take you 15, 20 minutes to go and get your lunch. Then you come back, or you stay there, you eat it, you've got 15, 20 minutes back. So if you add up all of that time, that's a good 2.5 hours. So it's not that you've finished early and haven't done enough work. It's that you've finished the work in hand. And by the same token, for people who are having to manage remote teams for the first time ever, if someone is what I call an MBS, manager by seeing, this creates major amounts of stress. If you're a management manager who manages by objectives, you're cool because you're already managing in this way. But if you're used to being able to manage someone because you can see them there, and now suddenly they're out of your line of sight, people often get so overbearing, ringing all the time and sending an email, and if you hadn't answered in 5 minutes, and they're like, where were you, what were you doing? And that piles the pressure on. But if as a manager you know that this job will have this output, when you receive that output, you can relax because you know the work's being done, your client and customer priorities are being met, and people aren't slacking off and doing nothing and spending all day on the sofa. So the scoping of the work is so important because it relieves stress on both sides. And actually then people have a cutoff point where I know when I have finished that, I'm done. And then I say, in terms of the scope, one of the things I get my clients to do when they're working from home, particularly if they're using their dining table, for instance, I say, when you're done, clear that off and redesignate the space. And when you walk out of that room, imagine you cross a threshold. And in the same way you leave the office, you've left work. And one of the things I suggest to managers and leaders is say this, put this out as a corporate directive, and say to your staff, if there's nothing mission critical and you don't need to be on call for 24 hours, send out a directive that the working day still finishes at 5:30, 6 o'clock. Because in this pandemic, people need a bit of structure. I know it sounds very basic and you'd think most people know that, but actually if somebody hasn't told you, it's okay not to reply to late text messages. It's okay not to reply to every single email. If somebody happens to email you at 10:15 and you want to show that you're on the ball, somebody needs to say that. And when it's been said corporate wide, everybody can go and just relax. And you know that even if that phone beeps, if you happen to have left it on and it beeps at 10:08, leave it alone.
Yeah. And I think just to add to that, also, it's important to understand that some of the people who are your managers, who are maybe very good at managing in the situation and the scenarios that they're used to, are also coming to terms with a new way. And not everybody is going to be great at managing teams in remote, and not everybody is going to be great at working remotely. And Marilyn will tell you this, it's a skill set to be able to work remotely, and it's something that we've all got to practice. We've got no choice. But it will come out the other side, and there will be choices and decisions then, and you're very welcome to then say, yeah, it's not for me, or maybe just on a Thursday. So what is our third tip then?
Our third and final tip, very short, small word, trust. I know that trust needs to be earned, but this comes a point where you're going to have to start trusting people because you can't see them. And I know some organizations have put something in. I actually think it's a good idea that, a daily Zoom call, for example. So now that everyone's up, everyone's out of bed, even if they're wearing their PJs under their shirts, they're up, they're out, and you've given them that sense of structure. But I think trust is a major, major piece in having the remote working and flexible working work effectively, because when you know that your manager trusts you to do a good job and trusts you to be able to do that, the staff feel empowered. And when you've got a workforce that you can trust, that it's a bit like that thing. I always say, look, you can tell what an organization is like when the manager's off site or on holiday. Now watch the team, see what they do. If they're like woohoo party time, we know that something's not right with that management. Whereas if the manager is away, it doesn't matter. Things still work like clockwork because somebody else is going to step in and take over the helm. So this might also potentially expose some things that need to be looked at in terms of leadership development, team development, but trust is a major, major part of this whole scenario.
And the other side of that is trusting yourself as well, because a lot of us are now flying without, well, we're not flying physically, but metaphorically. Yeah. All my metaphors don't work anymore. But let's imagine that we're flying without like in the clouds. So trust yourself and trust your intuition and make decisions without, some of us are not going to be able to get the answers straight away. The bosses, the managers, the senior teams are fighting the fires and keeping the business sort of keeping their head above water right now, like we all are. So try to trust yourself and talk about it after. What is the worst they're going to do? Tell you off because you did it wrong. Well, at least you tried something, which is better than just doing nothing.
And this is the point, we've got so much incredible technology at our fingertips that, 17 years ago, to be able to do what we're doing now took a massive amount of setup. You probably have to write some code, or, I remember back in the days, 30 years ago, I was going to do video conferencing sessions at the BT Centre in London, whereas now I'm sat in my home office. So it's so different. So I would definitely say to people, also keep in touch and just keep talking. And those little touch points are so important.
Amazing. Oh, well, Marilyn, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. You are a fountain of knowledge. Where can these guys find you online, and where can they connect?
Now, in terms of social media, so LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, it's / Marilyn Devonish, and it's Marilyn, and then Devonish, DEV for Victor, ONISH. My main website, where you'll find most of the therapeutic stuff that we alluded to at the beginning, is www.transformationstm.com, and trance is TRANCE, and then formations, F for Freddy, so FORMATIONS, TM as in trademark, so transformationstm.com. And there's a button there as well where you can kind of book an online consultation if there's anything you wanted to have a quick chat about, and also where you can kind of book online sessions and trainings, etc.
Amazing. And if you didn't get all that, Marilyn's going to leave it in the comments anyway. So thank you guys. Thank you, Marilyn, for your time and your expertise. Thank you guys on LinkedIn and Facebook. You've all been so fun today, adding your comments. Hi, Andy Parks. Hi, Beth, Sarita, Maria. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So we're back tomorrow, and tomorrow we're going to be talking all about how to manage and audit your time, so that then you can have an Easter break and come back the following week ready to, apply some new things. So if you've got any questions, you can always email me, hello@successbydesign.training. That's also in the comments. But until then, stay safe, stay well, keep washing your hands, and see you soon.